Powerful. I don't know if you just joined us, but I was just saying right over there in the monologue space that one of the things I like about the new Pope Leo XIV is that he's a regular guy. And another thing I like about him is that his name is Leo, which seems like a nickname for Leonardo, but it's not. It's just Leo. But I like how casual it sounds. It's like his name is Pope Bob. It's just friendly. And he says he chose the name Pope Leo in part to commemorate Pope Leo XIII for that Pope's commitment to social issues, the poor and workers' rights during the Industrial Revolution. Leo XIV is not just the first American Pope, he's also the first Augustinian friar to become Pope. And Pope Leo has chosen a motto based on the writing of Augustine, in illo uno unum, which means in the one we are one, which is a lovely thought. Every pope gets a motto, by the way. Pope Francis is roughly translated as, having mercy, he called him. And of course, Pope Benedict's was, now, young Skywalker, you will die. So, what is this new pope like? Here to tell me is best-selling author, chaplain of the Colbert Nation, and man who has met the Pope, Father Jim Martin. Father, thank you so much for being here. Much pleased. Good to see you. Jim, also the author of Come Forth, The Promise of Jesus' Greatest Miracle, which has an introduction by Pope Francis in the paperback edition. That's a nice get.
Very nice.
Now, Jim, always good to talk to you. Let's talk about Leo XIV. Previously, Robert Francis Prevost, Rob to his brother, Bob to his friends, has been known to the church but not the world. We're all finding out more about him. You've met the man. Father, what's the Pope like?
I think the most important thing to know is that he's a nice guy. He's modest, humble, which is a rarity in the Vatican. He's reserved, he's smart, but as his Augustinian brothers told me the other day, he's no pushover. So honestly, I think he's the perfect candidate. He's
so tough but gentle.
Yeah, I would say gentle but tough, but yes. Yeah.
How many angels can dance on the head of a pin,
right.
Father? Okay. Now, the conventional wisdom was that no American was going to be Pope.
Right.
And why was that the conventional wisdom? And why do you think that changed?
Because people thought that the United States already had enough power politically and economically, and why give it to them ecclesially? And, you know, there's some anti-Americanism, even in the Vatican and even among some cardinals. But his experience was so overwhelming that he was the obvious candidate. In the Italian press, he was described, this is not an insult, as the least American of the Americans, which is a compliment in Italy. And so people from Latin America saw him as one of their own because he was in Peru. He speaks perfect Spanish. Interestingly, his knowledge of English was really important for people in the Far East and people in English-speaking Africa. So they found someone during the conclave that they could, you know, literally talk to and understand. He's just a lovely person. And people told me in the conclave that it wasn't so much what he said, but how he said it. You know, he's just a really great guy.
One of the things, he had a press availability the other day, and as he was leaving, a reporter asked him, do you have a message for America? And he said, many. And then Pope out. Right. He left out. Right. You know, that's a miter drop right there.
That's right.
What do you imagine? I'm not asking you to read the Pope's mind, but reading the papal tea leaves here, what do you imagine, based upon what he's taught before and spoken of before, his message might be to those of us in the Church in America?
Well, he'll preach the gospel in season and out, and that includes standing up for the poor. As you said earlier, he took Leo as a nod to Leo XIII, who was the Pope who started Catholic social teaching, standing up for workers, the migrants, the poor. He talks specifically about being with people who suffered, but again, you know, remember, he was working with people who were poor in Peru. So I think he's also going to be very strong on migrants and refugees. So I think what's interesting is that, you know, President Trump and Vice President Vance are no longer going to be able to say the Pope doesn't understand America, right? And so we can ignore him safely. I don't think that's going to be the case any longer.
Well, one of the...
That's a prediction.
It's a little tough. Must be tough to be J.D. Vance right now. A little bit tough, you know.
Well, also, I mean, not to get too political, but, you know, J.D. Vance was tweeting stuff about St. Augustine. I don't think you want to tweet stuff about St. Augustine with an Augustinian Pope, you know, in the Vatican. So he's not going to be afraid to speak his mind.
He'll go Inquisition on you, right? He'll go Torquemada on you, baby. So, it's really striking to me. I was so moved. I didn't think it was going to be an American Pope. When I heard it was an American Pope and a Chicago Pope, because I love Chicago so much, having lived there, but when I heard it was an American Pope, I was strangely moved. I didn't expect that be a moving thing, but I got choked up when I heard. And then when I hear him speak, not just English, but an American English, Midwestern English, it changes my image of the Pope. What do you think that's going to do for the American church to hear an American Pope speaking to them in our own vernacular?
Well, just what you said, I think it's going to be hugely significant because we tend to see the Pope as, somewhat distant. He speaks with a, whatever kind of accent, Spanish or Italian or whatnot.
They speak
German.
like this. They all speak like this.
And to hear someone really preach the gospel in your own accent, it's incredible. I heard him talking the other day in English, and I thought, is this guy the Pope? And the answer is yes, he is the Pope. But it's great. It's, it brings the Vatican closer and brings the church closer. And it'll be fascinating when he goes to Chicago or Villanova or whatever, and, his white cassock, and he's the Pope.
Yeah. Can you imagine him cheering in the stands? Have you seen the footage of him at the 2005 White Sox World Series? When, it's like a 3-2 count and they cut to the stands and there's the Pope.
There he is, right, yeah.
It's the Pope watching the White Sox game. So he understands suffering, obviously.
Yeah, right, that's right.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes.
And miracles, too.
So, thanks largely to your connection to the Dicastery for Culture and Education and our long friendship, I was one of the comedians who got to meet the Pope this past summer. And thank you for that. And I loved Francis, and I loved getting to meet Francis. He was a time-changing and a heart-changing Pope to listen to, and actually to meet him was a great honor. What do you think now that he is gone, Francis's legacy is going to be?
I think people will remember him for the kind of person he was, which is a person of mercy and love and care and compassion. I think his outreach to the poor will be remembered. More kind of ecclesially, he'll be remembered for his encyclical on the environment. But really, he was someone who tried to bring people in from the margins and reach out to the peripheries. He was always doing that like Jesus did, reach out to people in the margins. So we lost a great Pope, but really, I can't underline this enough. We got a really good one. I mean, the Holy Spirit really did the Holy Spirit's work. I was very moved, too, to see him walk out on the balcony. And it's also nice to have the Pope as someone you know.
Sure. I hear you have his email.
No comment.
I'm not going to pry it out of you.
No comment.
I'll just steal your phone.
No.
Jim, good to see you again. Father James Martin, everybody. His latest book, Come Forth, The Promise of Jesus' Greatest Miracle, is out now. We'll be right back with Alexander Skarsgård.